You're on Facebook. So, you got your music ready. So, let me know when you're ready.
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, here we go then. 30 seconds. Recording. Live. And now we'll do the music. Go.
What did he say? What did he say? What did he say? What did he say?
You can come in anytime you want.
What did he say?
Good evening, and welcome to the Freedom Truth Radio Show with your host, the one and only Vincent Scott, where the truth will make you mad first and then make you free. We're here again, happy to be on our fourth show. Today is November 5th, 2017, and I can't believe this year is almost over. We are very happy to be here again. We missed 2 weeks ago. I have to give acknowledgments and shout out to my best friend. Had to lay his beautiful wife to rest, and just wanted to send condolences out to the family, the Sanderson family, and his mother-in-law is Miss Arwanda, my best friend Jamar Sanderson, the Fullwood family, and just want to say that life is too short, really. And I love the guy. He's like my brother. And when he hurt, I hurt. And just knowing that she's resting in a better place now, we're at peace. But I'm sure it's going to be a painful adjustment for him in the coming days. But send prayers, love, and light to his way, Jamar Sanderson and his family. And we'll keep him lifted up because he has to move on now and pretty much start fresh. That's just said to say to all of you all not to take life for granted. Life is too short, and for the things that we do take for granted and that we have issues with, we need not to have issues with. And that is a lead and a segue into the show that I have for tonight with my special guest, Miss Jane Elliott. Miss Jane Elliott is an American former third grade school teacher, an anti-activism racist educator, as well as feminist and LGBT activist. She's known for her blue eyes, brown eyes exercise. She first conducted her first exercise for her class the day after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. She is quite controversial, and I love that about her, but she speaks the truth. And what better guest to have on the Freedom Truth Radio Show? And this young lady is 84 years young and still fighting for the cause. Miss Jane Elliott, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Well, it's great to have you. Welcome to Freedom Truth Radio.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be here. I think we'll see, won't we?
Yes, we will. And I like I like the fact when I invited Ms. Elliott to my show, she told me that this show will do one of two things for you. It'll either boost your ratings or get you fired. So I'm going to take the gamble.
Now we'll see which is going to be rather quickly.
I'm going to take the gamble, and I hope this one will boost the ratings because you have some views that need to be heard by the public. First, Miss Elliott, I just want to know what breeded your passion for such a controversial subject back in the 60s when we're at a time of fiery civil rights movements, and there was a lot going on between the races and the color barriers. What breeded your passion for this?
Well, the idea that nothing can stop a man with a dream. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream, and we killed him. This society killed him. A single person didn't do that. This society killed him. But they didn't stop him because his dream is more alive now than it was when he was alive. So we proved that you can't stop a man with a dream. But the dream of other people, ignorant, white, and people of all colors, who are ignorant to believe in the myth of 3 or 4 different races is absolutely unacceptable to me. Totally unacceptable. To believe that the amount of a chemical in one's skin, melanin, or one's eyes affects one's intelligence or one's worth as a human being. We were going to learn this. We were studying the Indian unit at that time, and we were looking back on what we had done to Native Americans, mainly because they had the wrong color skin. And our lesson plan for the next day was to learn the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "Oh, Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." I had to arrange for my children to walk in the shoes of a black child for a day in my classroom, if only in a very, very small way, so that they could understand what it was that Martin Luther King Jr. was protesting. He wasn't protesting and he wasn't being violent. He was nonviolent. He was protesting what was happening to people of other colors in this country at that time. And I had to let my students know what it was like so that they could understand his protest. And I had no other way to do it. You can talk about this problem, the problem of racism, until you're blue in the face, and then you become another race, according to our racist behaviors and beliefs. But you don't solve it by talking about it. You have to experience it. If you're going to become empathetic, you have to walk in somebody else's shoes for a while. I didn't know that for sure until my husband died 4 years ago, and now I understand a whole lot of widows.
Wow.
Who are trying to get through till the next day, and I didn't know. But one becomes more empathetic as one has experiences that one hasn't had before.
That's very true. Absolutely. So what do you think about this whole notion of the whole black, white? I mean, why are we being named as crayons? I mean, this is not. If you look at the color of crayons, neither of us are the exact color of those hues that are in the Crayola box.
Glad you mentioned that, because several months after we had done the exercise, we were looking at our Crayola crayon box, and when they picked out the flesh color, it was peach.
Yeah.
And I immediately called the Crayola crayon company and said, "This is ridiculous. I can't allow my students to continue to use this box of Crayola crayons when the only flesh color in here is pink, like a white person."
Wow.
They now have a box of Crayola crayons. For a while they had, and they sent me several boxes of Crayola crayons that had several different flesh colors in it. It's absolutely remarkable. And now they don't have a flesh-colored crayon anymore. The one that used to be called flesh is now called peach. So that's progress. That's real progress for a black child to pick out a crayon now that looks like the color of his skin instead of one that says flesh and is pink. That's progress. It may not sound like much to many people, but it sounds like a lot to me.
Right. That is some progress. I mean, because you would never think that they would change or try to change the hue of the Crayola box to.
But they did.
Yeah, they did, and that is progress.
Yeah, that's progress. It's the little things that you can make progress with. But you hit them little stupid things, but not stupid, thoughtless, insensitive, ridiculous, and unreal things.
Right.
You can start with that. And right now we need to take out the thoughtless, the ridiculous, unnecessary, and insensitive words under God in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
Yeah. So
that was it should never have been put in there, and President Eisenhower knew shouldn't be in there, but the Knights of Columbus were making a fuss over it, and so they put it in there. It was going to stop the spread of godless communism. It didn't stop the spread of godless communism. It was a silly thing to do. It was a silly knee-jerk reaction to something, and he should have said, "We're going to leave the pledge as it is." It would have made more sense.
Yeah, definitely. So do you think that this whole notion of racism has gone in a step in the right direction, or do you think it's more undercover now?
The whole idea of race is a lie. It is a myth that was made up about 500 years ago. The myth of 3 or 4 different races was made up in order to make it all right to enslave or kill those who were different from you in a way that you could recognize. And it was after the Spanish Inquisition.
Yes.
They couldn't always tell what religion you were by the way you looked. But so they found a way that they could tell what your difference was, and they set it on skin color. And at that point, they decided to identify 3 or 4 or 5 different races. There are no different races. Every human being living on the face of the earth is a descendant of those first black females who evolved in sub-Saharan Africa about 280,000 years ago.
Yes.
And as those black people, as they evolved, they moved away from the equator. And as they traveled farther and farther from the equator, their skin, their hot hair, and their eyes got lighter. That is the only reason for lighter hair, skin, and eyes. It is not because as they traveled, they got smarter. That's not what happened. And people now we're hearing about clinal differences.
Mm-hmm.
These differences are a result of clinal differences. Well, that's a nice thought, but those people who are these Asian folks who have a slightly yellow cast to their skin,
mm-hmm.
also are descendants of those first black females who evolved in sub-Saharan Africa.
Yes.
Their difference is their bodies have adapted to the natural environment because of of their diet.
Wow. Yes.
It has nothing to do with being God's chosen children. It has nothing to do with intelligence.
Yes.
Being white doesn't make you right. Just because it rhymes with right and bright doesn't make you right.
Mm-hmm.
It also rhymes with fight and fright and slight.
Wow.
So we ought to be more careful about how we use words.
Yes.
You and I don't know what your color is, but you and I are members of the same race, the human race.
Human race.
There is only one race of people on the face of the earth. There are no biracial people. And when somebody says to me, I'm from a biracial family, I immediately say, well, that's very interesting. Which of your parents came from outer space? And then they get all discombobulated. How could you say, hey, I'm not making the distinction. You are. You're
mm-hmm.
saying that you're biracial. There's only one race on the face of the earth, it's Homo sapiens. If you are of a different race, you've come from another place.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to get T.I. Harris and Killer Mike to write some hip hop or a rap song.
Good.
About that fact, because I know that little white, brown, black, yellow, red children, and red children don't exist. That was a silliness that white people made up when they came to this country. I want one of those males or both of those males to write a song that little kids will be singing just as they sing the ridiculous advertising little ditties that you hear on television.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the land of sky blue water, and my school kids used to come and singing that. And I thought, well, it's not really appropriate for third grade classroom, but that's right. You got the rhythm right, and you're singing it right, so go ahead and sing it. It makes you happy to sing, do that. And that's what I'd like to have kids doing that with a song that says we're same race. If you got a different face, you're still my race.
Wow, that's good. That's very good. I think that is something that's definitely needed and needs to be purported within the education system. What would you say is one of the biggest lies that's purported in the education system? Because I hear you say often that we're not being educated, we're being indoctrinated.
That's exactly what we're being. And when we're still celebrating Columbus Day, as if Columbus discovered America, you can't discover a place where people are already living. They discovered it before you got there.
Yes.
We need to stop that nonsense. And if you're going to keep on doing that nonsense, then you need to read the book, which I'm in the process of reading right now, and is absolutely fascinating. And the number of it is Tears of Mermaids, and it's about the pearl industry. Now, that sounds like a silly thing to read if you're talking about race, but you read what what Spanish people did to natives of this continent when they wanted their pearls. It is absolutely insane. And they got away with it, and we're still getting away with it in South Africa with gold mines.
Yes.
When you read about what happens to the people in Africa who are mining gold and what is being done to them, you cannot claim to be more human or more intelligent or more Christian or more moral than the people who are mining that gold.
Yeah.
And if you continue to allow that to go on, then you have to admit that we white people aren't as smart as the people that we have been exploiting for the last how many hundred years.
Wow. Wow. You know, it's interesting to see the reactions of some of your uh, exercises that have been done, especially when you had you were on the stage and you said anybody that is willing to trade places or take the treatment.
Any white person in this audience
Yeah.
who'd like to spend the rest of their life being treated the way we have treated people of color in this country for the last 400 years, please
Stand up.
stand.
Yeah. And nobody stood.
stands.
No.
And then I say to them, you didn't understand the directions, and I repeat it.
Mm-hmm.
And they just look sideways at each other, and nobody moves.
Wow. Wow.
And when somebody says to me in a group, well, if those people get power, aren't they going to want to treat us the way we've treated them? I say, do you realize what you just did?
Mm-hmm.
You just admitted that you know it's happening, you know you're doing it, and you know you're afraid
ignoring
it's going to come back on you.
Yes.
If you don't want the way you're being, if you don't want to be treated in the future the way you're treating someone in the present, you'd better change the way you're treating others in the present.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because you are constructing the future by the way you behave now. And yours is a program about freedom,
Yes.
the Freedom Truth radio show.
Yes.
I'll tell you how you get freedom.
Mm-hmm.
When we all give up the idea of 3 or 4 or 5 different races.
Mm.
When we all reach the point where we can look at one another as 30th to 50th cousins, and not as a member of a different race, but as a member of the family of man.
Wow.
It will give people of color the freedom to not have to be expecting to be treated, to be talked down to for the rest of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And it will give white people the freedom not to have to talk down to people and not to have to act as if they are superior when in fact they aren't. Skin color does not give you superiority.
Wow.
It does, however, if you aren't careful, it increases your freedom to remain ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a real bad freedom to be happy with.
Yes.
You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set ye free.
Yeah.
I think Victor Hugo said, no force on earth can stop an idea whose time has come.
Mm-hmm.
I think the idea of one race, the human race, is an idea whose time has come. And I don't think anybody is going to be able to stop it. Donald Trump isn't going to be able to stop it.
Not at all.
Pence isn't going to be able to stop it. Sessions isn't going to be able to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry Falwell's son isn't going to be able to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to admit that we are all members of the same race and that skin color is not an indication of your worth as a human being.
Yeah, that's right. I love this shirt that you wear. Prejudice is an emotional commitment to ignorance. I love that shirt.
I think it is.
Yeah.
And I think, and prejudice, however, isn't the problem. I don't care what you think of me. The problem is discrimination.
Yes.
And discrimination causes prejudice. Prejudice doesn't cause discrimination. Prejudice is an attitude. Discrimination is a behavior. You can treat a certain group of people, you can treat them badly, you can say negative things about them, and convince everybody around you that they are as bad as you say they are. You create prejudice by discriminating.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Everybody thinks that it is a case of prejudice causing discrimination.
Right.
No, you are taught how to prejudge people by
Yes.
the way you treat the people you want to prejudge.
Wow.
Yeah, they've done studies that prove that teachers are more upset by the students who fail to live down to their expectations of them than they are by those who fail to live up to their expectations of them. Probably one of the worst things a black student, particularly male, can do in this country, in the schools in this country, is exceed the teacher's expectations.
Mm. Yes.
Yeah.
Very
You
true.
know that, and I know that, and teachers know that.
Something I tell my children all the time. Very true.
You tell them what?
To always exceed expectations of their instructors.
They should do as at the very best they can, in spite of, and not because of, what anybody else says about them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, really difficult when a whole system is putting you down. It's got to be extremely difficult to refuse to live down to their expectations. But in my classroom, there was only one person who was telling them who was to be good and who was to be bad. And those kids responded to that day of having lowered expectations. The bright ones turned less bright. And the not as quick ones, the not as quick ones turned quicker.
Mm-hmm.
I watched kids, boys who could not read the day before. The day they had the right color eyes, read it and spelled words I knew they couldn't read or spell. And it was because I had given them the right color. I had given them magic eyes and changed my expectations for them. And they lived up to my expectations of them. This on the same days that those blue-eyed kids who were brilliant could not succeed academically because they were living down to my expectations of them. If you can do that, if you can change a child's brain with a day, what do you do to black children? When you lower your expectations of them on a daily basis, and teachers all over this country do that every day. And if you think I'm making this all up, because I know you don't, you know I'm not making.
No, I know
up,
you're not.
But I know you're not, but you need, I'm not, but you need to read The Racial Conditioning of Our Children by Nathan Rutstein. It is absolutely one of the most important books that teachers will ever read, because it says there's just no doubt. After you read what he's saying, there's no doubt in your mind. But what's happening in schools is destroying children. The subtitle on that book is Ending Psychological Genocide in Schools. And that's what's going on. If you tell a child long enough that he can't succeed, and you put him in what the teachers called, for 2 years I had nothing but the kids in the third grade who had real severe reading problems. The teachers called my kids the dummy group. Surprisingly, more of my former students went on to finish high school and go to college than did the students in the other teachers' groups, in the smart groups. And it's because my kids weren't dumb. My students weren't dumb. They were dyslexic, and they had to have a teacher who knows how to teach the dyslexic child.
Yes.
Most of the children who are called dumb or who are called slow learners or who have a learning problem, many of them, the vast majority of them, are dyslexic, and they need somebody who knows how to teach to dyslexia.
Wow.
Yeah, the whole thing just irritates me no end.
I think someone could have been very inspired by your work, because I just ran across another book the other day, and I haven't started reading it yet, but I'm looking at the contents, and it's pretty interesting. It's called "Why Are All the Black Children Sitting Together in the Cafeteria?"
Sitting together in the school cafeteria.
Yeah, and I said, wow.
Yeah.
I said, this is an interesting sounding book. And I just flipped through some of the contents, and I said, wow, this is it looks like it may hit on some of the same content that you have been researching for years.
But it isn't because of I don't do the research. I'm not a researcher. It isn't because of what I've done. It's because there have been people, sensitive, empathetic, intelligent people, studying why is this happening with black kids more often than with white kids.
Right.
For 300 years. But
Yes.
you don't get any positive reinforcement for saying, look, the problem isn't with the children. The problem and it isn't with their skin color. The problem is with the ignorance about skin color. That's the problem. Now, you can't change skin color. You shouldn't have to, but you can change ignorance. There's a cure for ignorance.
Yes.
It's called real education. Not teaching, not counseling, not training, but education, which is leading people out of ignorance. We've got to lead people out of the ignorance of thinking that having more or less melanin in your skin makes you a better or worse human being.
Yes. Now, what's very interesting about your study is that you chose a characteristic that can be diverse with any colored human being. And you talked about the brown eye, blue eye study. I know some brown skinned people who have blue eyes. And when you make that separation, that puts a different parameter across the board as far as separating who's on one side of the room and who's on the other. And when you look at those two separations, you don't only just have black people and white people on different sides of the room. What made you come to that conclusion with using just one feature or characteristic of that?
Because that's how Hitler decided who went into the gas chamber.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't make this up. This is if you haven't read Mile 18, you'd have to get it and read it. It's about the Warsaw Ghetto, and it's about how little Jewish kids would get out of the ghetto looking to scavenge for food, and if they saw a German soldier coming toward them, they dropped their eyes in a hurry and looked away so that the soldier wouldn't see that they had brown eyes. Because if they had brown eyes and the soldier saw it, they would take them immediately to the prison camp.
Wow.
I didn't invent this, and neither did any of the many. I'm sure there are many teachers who have done this before I did. I know my mother did it on a daily basis. I was the only one in the family with dark blue eyes. There must be something wrong with me, and I was the only one with really dark hair, so that it was obvious that I was a throwback to something.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, it isn't original with me, but it made sense to do it that way that day because eye color and skin color are caused by the same chemical.
Yes.
Melanin.
That's right.
So, it made sense to do it that way, and it worked so much better than I had any idea that it would. I didn't go into that thing knowing what I was going to find out. I learned things that day that I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know when those kids corrected me when I made a mistake that day that the reason I made that mistake is because I had those blue eyes. Brown-eyed people were on top the first day I did the exercise. And they immediately let me know that, well, how come you're the teacher here? And Debbie said, how come you're the teacher here if you got them blue eyes?
Wow.
Yeah, and immediately I thought, oh my God, she's treating me the way the significant adults in her environment have talked to or about people who were different from themselves.
Yes.
What have I created here? It was terrifying. And it was, I didn't want to know that about myself. I didn't want to know how I looked to people of color. But I found out that day, and there were no people of color in that room. But I turned a bunch of kids into white people and black people, simply by treating them positively or negatively on the basis of the amount of a chemical in their eyes. Doesn't make sense, does it?
No.
And yet we've been doing it in this country for how many years?
Yes, it's true.
Doesn't make sense. We're the leader of the free world, not anymore. Of course, we aren't anymore either.
No.
Since Donald Trump, we are no longer seen as leaders of the world.
What's your name?
We're in real trouble. We are in real trouble right now.
We are in real trouble. What's your name for Donald Trump? Heard that.
Donosaurus T. Rump. So think about it. He has a face that looks like a rump. He has a mouth that looks like an anal aperture. And when he opens it, he spews forth excrement.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't use any filthy words,
No,
so
you
don't
did
come
not.
down on me about that. Donald Trump speaks excrementally.
Yes, he does. That's very true.
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
And he's got a whole bunch of people who will follow him because he appeals to their lesser natures.
Yeah, it's very true. Very true. Do you?
And he is determined to destroy
Well,
Barack Obama's legacy.
Yeah.
That's all he wants in life, is to destroy the legacy of that black president. Because he thinks that Barack Obama was our first black president.
And he wasn't.
When he wasn't. No.
That's right. Well, please enlighten some of the people, because I'm sure that's the first time that some of them have heard that. Because many people in the mainstream realm of understanding do think that Barack Obama was our first black president.
Well, he wasn't.
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln was. He was part black, he was part European, and he was part Cherokee Indian. And his a long story. Anyway, next question. I could go into the stories for the rest of the
No, that's good. I love that. I love to hear that.
A young woman called me one day and said, "Could I come and visit with you?" I said, "Well, yeah, sure, come on." I get lots of people like that. She rang the bell. I went to the door, and here stood this tall woman, long fingers, long arms, black hair, almost mahogany face, and green eyes. And I said, "Oh my God, you're a Melungian." She said, "How did you know that?" I said, because look at you, you've got green eyes and all the things that you would expect someone who was partially black to have. She said, that's exactly what I am, and nobody else ever recognizes it. Let me show you my sons.
Wow.
I had never been in the company of a Melungeon that I could identify before. I'd been to Australia several times.
Yes.
And you see people with green eyes, white people with green eyes all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to them, where do all these green eyes come from? And they said, when a Kuri mates with a white person, their children are white and have green eyes.
Wow.
Now that's what I heard about the third time I was there. The last time I was there, there were people from this country in the outback buying blood from the Kuris so that they could bring it back to this country to find out why it is that Kuri offspring, when they mate with a white person, lose their skin color so quickly.
Mm.
Now that made me really uncomfortable, because what that says is we're trying to figure out a way to breed out skin color.
Yes.
Yeah. Now that's
Wow.
pure, unadulterated, ignorant
That
racism.
is. It really is.
Yes, it really is. And these are educated people who are doing it.
Highly educated.
And
Yeah.
well, not so highly educated. They're probably well schooled, but not
Mhm.
well educated.
Well, right. There's a difference. That's true.
Yeah. There's a difference between schooled and educated.
Mhm.
We do a lot of schooling in this country,
Yeah.
but not very much
Not much
education.
education,
Because if we
yeah.
did the proper education in this country, we wouldn't have to worry about racism anymore. We created racism.
Mm-hmm.
God created the race, the human race.
Mm-hmm.
Mankind created racism.
Yes.
Anything you create, you can destroy. We could destroy racism if we chose to.
If we
And
chose
I
to.
guess you know that we white folks are going to be praying that we can destroy it within the next 30 years, because within 30 years, white people will have become a numerical minority in the United States of
Mm.
America.
Wow.
And white folks are scared to death,
Mm-hmm.
many of them, that people of color are going to treat us the way we have treated them.
Wow. Do you have some within the so-called white race that look at you in resentment for pretty much spilling the beans about what's being purported or what has been purported over the years? Like you're letting the secret out.
I speak, but what's your question?
Do you have some people within the so-called white race that look at you as a person that's like a Benedict Arnold, or like you're?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Oh yeah. They called me a traitor to my race, and I say, what do you mean? I'm not a traitor to the human race. That's the only race I recognize. And then they don't know what to do about that.
Right.
Because it hasn't occurred to them yet that there's only one race. And just because it says the family of man in the Bible, you don't need to think that means anything.
Of course not.
That's what just kills me.
Mm-hmm.
It's in the Bible, folks. Jesus had feet of bronze and woolly hair, kinky woolly hair.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't often see that one hanging in a church, do you?
No, you don't. You don't.
No. As far as we white folks are concerned, Jesus looked just like the little Pillsbury Doughboy. And God is an old white man with a long gray beard that looks like Charlton Heston playing Moses.
That's all the pictures we've ever seen.
We have rearranged the environment to fit our needs.
Mm-hmm.
And we want somebody that we can pray to, that we can relate to, so it has to be white, and it better be male.
Wow.
Now that's the way I see things. Not everyone will see it that way.
No.
I know. Reverend Falwell's son doesn't see it that way.
No, he doesn't.
And that's one of the people that Mr. Donosaurus T. Rump is fond of.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Because Donosaurus T. Rump knows the Bible. As he said one day, he held it up, he said, I know the Bible. In 2 Corinthians it says, and I fell out laughing.
Yeah,
2 Corinthians with the
2 Corinthians, yeah, he knows the Bible all right. Yeah.
It's just this is what he knows.
Yeah.
This is how deep his knowledge of most things is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
2 Corinthians.
2 Corinthians. Yeah,
Schools.
that's good.
Put as Secretary of Education someone who knows nothing about education.
No.
Put in Health and Human Services somebody who's lived in a house.
Yeah.
And that's what people said about him. Well, he lived in a house.
So that qualifies him. That's good.
That's housing and urban development. That qualifies him. I tell you, this person who is wrecking our government at the present time is so blatantly racist and sexist and homophobic and ethnocentric that it appalls me to think that friends of mine, relatives of mine, helped to put him where he is.
Yes.
Yeah, I consider that a real it's a real indication of their character.
Right. Very true. Very true.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one of the things I wanted to ask you about was it was one of the reactions of one of the girls that you had in your class, and you kept telling her she's doing the same thing. You're still doing the same thing. She just did not want to admit that she was being racist out front. And I guess it was hard for her to accept the fact that you had pointed her racism out to her, and she, of course, accused you of being mean and judgmental. Why is it that when the light is shown on these individuals, they have a hard time dealing with their own hypocrisy, so to speak?
Because their self-image is based on the amount of chemical in their skin.
Mm-hmm.
And if it isn't a magic thing, what do I have? If that doesn't make me better than a whole lot of other people, what do I have?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and if that's the only thing you base your self-image on, and in many cases it is, then what are you going to do? Where do you look for self-image? Where do you look for self-improvement? Where do you look for something that says, I'm better than somebody else? You can't use skin color. And if that's the only one thing you're using, there are lots of us white folks who don't have to work really hard and don't have to try really hard and don't have to succeed a whole lot as long as we stay white.
Because of white privilege.
Not because of white privilege, because of white ignorance.
Okay.
And the perpetuation of that ignorance by our education system.
Yes.
It is not about white privilege. It is about white ignorance. And the reason I say that is because the white privilege and the invisible knapsack came out of the belief in several different races. I have these privileges because of my race. I can do this because of my race. I can get away with this because of my race. Well, if you think there's only one race, then that wipes out that whole thing unless you just talk about skin color.
That's it. That's
yeah.
Right.
If you want to talk about privilege and skin color, we can do that. But I'm not going to talk about white privilege because of my race, because my race has nothing to do with my skin color.
Wow.
We're all members of the same race. And in the eyes of God, we're all equal.
Right. Because this is just an earth
unless you are quite certain that God made man in God's own image. And people are saying that, and I say, wait a minute. That doesn't mean that God looks like a white male. That means that God imagined something, an animal that could walk on two legs and had neither feather nor fur. And with a thinking brain. Yes. He imagined that creature. He also imagined an aardvark and a kangaroo. You think that God is a kangaroo or an aardvark?
Not at all.
Well, you see, we use words in ways that perpetuate and perpetrate this ridiculousness.
That's right.
We use words to maintain a myth. It's time to give it up. It's ridiculous. There's a meme out there now about Thomas Edison. You ought to read it. It's on, Sarah, what is that? You remember? There's a meme on there that Thomas Edison, they sent him home from school one day with a note. And the teacher said, don't you read this, you give it to your mother. So he gave it to his mother, and she read it. And he said, what does it say? And she said, it says, Thomas is a genius. He is too smart for us to teach him. You teach him at home. So his mother taught him. And then later on, his mother died, and he was cleaning out her stuff, and he found that note. And the note, in fact, said, "Your child is not mentally, is a hopeless dullard. He cannot be taught."
Wow.
But the mother lied, and the man became what he was, which was what his mother decided he was going to be,
Yes.
which was a genius. But he was described as a hopeless dullard when he was in school. Did you know that?
I never knew that.
Wow.
I
Well,
never
I
knew
knew
that.
that he'd been labeled a hopeless dullard, and then there he was. And then I read that thing, and if that really happened, oh my God!
That's amazing. Yeah.
Look what we might not have had
What- exactly.
had that mother
Yes.
not been sharper than a tack
Mhm.
and knew how to teach that child.
Wow. Talking about
Yeah.
changing his whole paradigm. That's amazing.
Well, yeah, but how many black kids are able to look at, just for one, look at Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
His mother would not believe what people in this country said about black children.
That's right.
And she treated him as if they were wrong,
Mm-hmm.
and they were.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing she couldn't do for him was make him white. And
Right.
people like Donald T. Rump will never forgive him. And that is what's so funny about this whole thing. We make black people responsible for how we feel about them. White people blame our feelings about black people on the color of their skin as if black people chose that.
Mm-hmm.
It never occurs to us that the reason we behave the way we do and think the way we do about black people is because of our ignorance. But if we can give the problem to somebody else, then we don't have to change ourselves. And we don't want to
It's true.
change if we can avoid it.
Yeah, you don't want to take self-responsibility. And that.
Oh, no,
that's
no,
very
and don't
true.
want to self-educate.
No.
If everybody would go out and get that book, The Myth of Race, and read it, no matter how difficult it is, they could change. They could teach their children in different ways.
Yes.
But that would require putting some effort into it, and you'd have to get out from in front of the television and put down your little handheld devices.
That's very true. Absolutely.
It's easier to be entertained than to be educated.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. What would you say, in your opinion now, what would be the one portion of curriculum that needs to be eliminated from today's education?
Well, history until we start telling the truth.
Right.
Yeah, we need to change we need to tell the truth in history.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't tell the truth in religion classes. We don't do that.
No,
And
that's
Christmas
definitely
is
right.
coming. And we're going to see pictures of the blonde, pale-faced, blue-eyed Blessed Virgin
Mm-hmm.
and the little white baby Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm advising people to go downtown, buy a box of Christmas cards, put the pictures of the Holy Family on, take it home, color them all right, and then send out their cards. But next year they won't get any Christmas cards. They won't have to worry about huge numbers. If we could look at the way things were instead of the way we wanted them to be,
Yes.
we could grow as a nation.
Very true.
And that, of course, is the problem with our so-called president.
Mm-hmm.
He has no adult ego state. He is always in either his child or his parent ego state. Somehow, he doesn't have an adult ego state. It is just amazing to watch him go from child to parent to child to parent to child to parent. And then
That's
he
true.
reads something on the whatever you call that thing.
Teleprompter.
And
Yeah.
that's it, the teleprompter, and he does really well, and it makes sense. And then after he finishes reading that statement, then he says, "Believe me." What? Believe me. It's like he slipped right back into his parent ego state. For a minute there, he had to act like an adult, and then he slips right back into his parent ego state, and then he makes some absolutely atrocious remark about another group, and then he's in his child ego state, and I sit and I make little checks on a piece of paper, child, parent, child, parent. I never have to check adult.
Wow.
And there's a new book out there that everybody should read, and I'm reading it right now, and it's I hope everybody reads it. It's The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. 27 psychiatrists and mental health experts assess a president.
Wow.
Yeah, you've got to read it. It will.
I want to get that. That sounds like a page turner.
Yeah, it's going to be. It's going to be a page turner.
The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. I'm putting that in
The
the chat
Dangerous
right now.
Case of Donald Trump. And everybody should read Beyond Racism by Whitney Young.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that he says in there to black employers, hire black. Put a sign over your desk that says, hire black. And they don't all have to be perfect to get hired. He says, I see dumb white people getting jobs all the time. Whitney Young knew what he was talking about.
Yes.
But you can be white and not real bright and still get a job.
Very true.
But if you are black, you better be really good.
Instant New York Times bestseller.
The Dangerous
Wow.
Case of Donald Trump is an instant New York Times bestseller.
I'm sure it is.
Already today.
Already. Well, I just put it in the chat so people could know where to pick that book, because I'm sure it's going to fly off the shelves.
Well, we got it from Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just, hey, oh well. Anyway, next question. Have I answered any of your questions?
No,
yet?
you've answered all my questions perfectly, and it's been such a pleasure to talk to you, because you have such a wealth of knowledge just on this subject. Well, one thing is that you've seen so much in the last 40, 50 years, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of things change, and a lot of things that were promising to change, and then some things that have stayed the same.
Well,
have gotten worse.
Right now, we are repeat. Those who forget the mistakes of the past, they're doomed to repeat them.
Mm-hmm.
And we are right now repeating the mistakes of the Nazis.
Mm.
Divide and conquer. Divide a group. Pick out a group that you are going to dehumanize or you're going to demonize. Accuse them of being the reason for all the problems we have.
Mm-hmm.
Incite anger and hatred toward them by the simple-minded around you. And you can create a situation that need never have been created.
True.
Or you can exacerbate a problem that was getting solved. And if you don't want it solved, you do what this man is doing now
Mm-hmm.
with the help of Stephen Bannon.
Yeah.
And because those two men weren't old enough to realize how dangerous that is, and because they don't realize that they can't really control it, they think they can control it. But what are they going to do when people turn on them? And they will.
That is the $1 million question. They will. What are they going to do? That's very
Yeah,
true.
what are they going to do?
Yeah.
What are they prepared to do?
Mm-hmm.
And neither
Yeah.
one of them has the courage to stand up and defend what it is and what he is.
Wow.
Donald Trump got 5 deferments so that he wouldn't have to go to Vietnam, and ridicules John McCain.
Yes, he does.
Yeah,
Very true.
and veterans. Yeah, and
Mhm.
takes away veterans' rights just as fast as he can.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's not
he's
good.
not the only villain, however. People
No.
who are dumb enough to vote
No.
for him, people who are dumb enough to vote for him, help to cause this problem.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, this isn't about, for the most part. Here it is. Here's the thing. On the paper was written, "Your son is addled. We won't let him come to school anymore."
Mm-hmm.
That's what the teacher wrote about Edison.
That's amazing. And then, but his
Isn't that
mother
something?
knew how to turn that around, which is powerful.
She had to turn it around.
Mm-hmm.
She read the letter out loud to her child. "Your son is a genius. The school is too small for him and doesn't have enough good teachers for training him. Please teach him yourself." After many years, Edison's mother died, and he was now one of the greatest inventors of the century. One day he was looking through old family things. Suddenly he saw a folded paper in the corner of a drawer in the desk. He took it and opened it up. On the paper was written, "Your son is addled, mentally ill. We won't let him come to school anymore."
Wow.
Yeah.
That is powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, you want that, where you get that thing, you ought to have that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very true.
Google what?
Google, what's that guy's name?
Thomas Edison.
Thomas Edison's mother's letter.
Yeah, Google
Okay.
Thomas Edison's
Edison's
mother's letter
letter.
from a teacher. I hope it's the truth. It sounds, because I had heard, when I was doing the dyslexia thing, when I was getting trained how to teach the dyslexic, one of the things they told us was that Thomas Edison's teacher said that he was a hopeless dullard.
Wow.
A hopeless dullard.
Well, Miss Elliott, it has absolutely been a wonderful pleasure speaking to you. And I hope this is not the last time I have you on the show. I would love to have you on again to talk about some of your videos that you've done and the studies that you've done.
You call me and we'll visit.
Okay. Well, I appreciate
What
that.
we'll do is you call me and I'll talk and you'll listen. I'm sorry.
That's fine. No, 'cause I want to listen because it's a lot to be talked about, a lot to cover.
But you know, and I know, that you've forgotten since breakfast more than I'll ever learn about racism. You know that as well as I do.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And you also know that, unless I'm mistaken, you also know that white folks will listen to a white person.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And it's not right. And it's not smart. And it's not logical. But that's the way it is. And if that's the way it is, then that's what we'll deal with, you and I.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cousin?
All right. Cousin Jane is on the line, everybody. Check out her website, janeelliott.com. You can order her videos there. You can actually get one of those T-shirts there that she has. Prejudice is an emotional commitment to ignorance.
You could also order my book there.
Yes, your book is on that website as well.
A collar in my pocket. And it isn't brilliant writing, but it is a description of how white people of any age behave when they are treated for a couple of minutes or a couple of hours, the way people of color are treated for a lifetime in the United States of America.
Yes.
And their reactions to that and their inability to perform academically or to get through that hour and a half is just amazing in view of the fact that so many, many, many black people have gotten through it for a whole lifetime, and they're still getting through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely, I'm sure it's quite gut-wrenching for some of them.
Yes, it's gut-wrenching. It's so gut-wrenching that I've had a knife pulled on me. I've been hit by a white male during the exercise. I've been threatened with death.
Wow.
Yeah. Black folks don't like to hear that. And if a black person had hit me the day the white male did, he'd have gone straight to jail.
Absolutely. Probably be on death row right about now.
And I asked the participants, what would you have done if a black male had treated me the way that fool just did?
Mm-hmm.
Why, they wouldn't have put up with that. Thank you very much. You made my point. One of them said, how long did it teach you to train those guys to treat you like that? I said, do you think that your company pays me enough to come in here and let some little punk fool hit me?
Right.
That's another form of prostitution. That is not what happened here. He was acting on his own. I thought you had to teach him to do that. You see, white males have to be trained to behave that way, but blacks just do that naturally.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It's all unbelievable. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly the word for it. It's unbelievable. And if you read about it in a book, you'd say they're lying.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And that's exactly what we say. That's exactly what we say to black people who complain. Well, it isn't really that bad. You're imagining that. You're playing the race card.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I want somebody to say that to me one more time.
I'm sure you've had it said enough.
I've heard it, and you've heard enough.
Yeah.
And you've had enough people say to you, when I see you, I don't see you black.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And you've had enough people say to you, if all black people acted the way you do, we wouldn't have the problems we have with these people.
Yep. Yeah. That's
Well,
what they say.
those are all things you
I've
shouldn't
heard
have to
that.
take it. You shouldn't have to take it.
Right. Very true. Well, it's been a pleasure of an interview. Coming to a close of the show, but like I said, we will have you back on again. Thank you so much for calling in and being our guest today. Miss Elliott,
Well,
you
thank
have
you
a good night.
Thank you for letting me talk for almost an hour.
Sure. No, that's what the show was for.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, I wouldn't want you to think I'm opinionated.
No. Well,
no, never.
no,
Read
none of
those
that.
books and read those books and call me again.
I will.
Okay.
I sure will. Good night.
All right. Good night now.
There you have it, folks. Miss Jane Elliott. As you can see, she's quite passionate about her subject matter and well within valid points that she has made. And to say some of the things that she has said, I'm pretty sure she's had many threats on her life, but it's true. It's very true. And anytime you take a position of speaking truth, which is what we do here on Freedom Truth Radio, you might have those types of threats or people that just disagree with you so violently that they want to put a stop to what you're announcing or purporting. But that's okay. That's the price you pay for that. And we're not afraid here. And I'm sure she's not afraid because she's lived through it for 84 years. And any of you that have any kind of passionate view such as that or anything else, you should not be afraid to speak. You should not be afraid. If it's truth, you should not be afraid to speak it at all. Truth should be announced. It should be advertised. It should be purported. It should be blasted. And it should not be hidden. We had enough of the lies. We've had enough of the things that are undercover. Had enough of that. So it's time for truth. It's time to pull the covers off and let the truth be resounded all across the land. With that being said, it has come to a close of our show for tonight. Next week, we have Dr. Titus McMillan coming on to talk about conscious health and eating. Actually, he and his wife, she's a nutritionist, and they're going to talk about, they have a 5-day health challenge that they put out along with some books that he has written. He's also a psychologist. He wants to talk about some mental health and also proper diet. So that's the show you don't want to miss. Something to get in mind before these so-called holidays come up where people do a lot of gorging and indulging in all the wrong and bad foods. We do it every year. And we say at the beginning of the new year, they're going to start off fresh and start working out and exercising. Why not just change the whole paradigm for your lifestyle instead of trying to make this a yearly resolution after you've done so bad on these so-called holidays? It doesn't have to continue in this vein. Make some healthy choices. If you're going to have holiday meals, there's no hard and fast rule that says you have to have a big greasy turkey and a bunch of ham and all these starches and stuff. Make some healthy choices. Take everybody out for some kind of vegetarian meal or something like that. Make something different. Explore your options. There's so many options in food nowadays. I mean, we got Food Network showing you how to do things. We got all these different health stores that you can go to with different farmers markets, local farmers markets, where you can get good and wholesome vegetation and fruits. You don't have to eat the same way that is being pushed to you by the standard American diet, which I like to call the SAD diet. Keep that in mind. We'll see you next week. Same time, same station. Freedom Truth Radio Show, where the truth will make you mad first and then make you free. Good night.
You are clear.
Good.
and you're all Facebook.